Okay, I need to set the scene for you. It is a Tuesday. You are a teenager, maybe 16 years old. You go to bed at a normal time, nothing unusual. You feel fine, maybe a little tired, but nothing alarming. And then you wake up and your mom is crying, and the date on your phone says it is 3 weeks later. 3 weeks of school gone. 3 weeks of group chats unanswered. 3 weeks of your life completely missing from your memory. And the wild part? Your family says you were up, you were eating, you were even talking sometimes, but you are not you. That is Kleine-Levin Syndrome. And today, we are going into the deep end.
And before we go further, I just want to acknowledge something. This is not just a weird science episode, even though it absolutely is that. This is also about real people whose lives get interrupted in one of the most disorienting ways imaginable. So we are going to hold both things at once today, the science and the humanity.
Kleine-Levin Syndrome, abbreviated KLS, is listed in the International Classification of Sleep Disorders as a rare, recurrent hypersomnia. It was first formally described in the medical literature in the 1920s by Willy Kleine, and later expanded upon by Max Levin in 1936. The condition is estimated to affect approximately 1 to 2 individuals per million worldwide, making it exceptionally rare. However, researchers and patient advocacy groups believe the true prevalence is higher due to significant rates of misdiagnosis.
So let us start with the basics. KLS is a neurological disorder. It is not a psychiatric condition, even though it gets mistaken for one constantly. It is not voluntary, and it is not something a person can just push through with willpower or caffeine. During an episode, the brain essentially goes into a state that researchers are still trying to fully map. And it does this repeatedly, sometimes for years.
KLS is characterized by 3 primary features. The first is recurrent episodes of hypersomnia, defined as sleeping 16 to 20 hours per day. The second is cognitive impairment during episodes, including confusion, slowed thinking, difficulty speaking, and a subjective sense of unreality, often described as derealization. The third is behavioral and sometimes autonomic disturbances, which can include hyperphagia, meaning compulsive overeating, irritability, childlike behavior, and in a subset of patients, hypersexuality. These behaviors are not voluntary and cease when the episode ends.
And I want to pause on that derealization thing, because I think it is one of the most important parts of understanding what KLS actually feels like from the inside. People who have recovered from episodes describe it as watching their life through a window, or being wrapped in cotton, or feeling like they are in a dream that they cannot wake up from, even though they are technically awake. That is not just weird. That is genuinely one of the most psychologically destabilizing things a person can experience.
And here is what I keep coming back to. The person going through this does not always know something is wrong, because they are in it. They are not experiencing the horror of it in real time the way their family is. The horror comes after, when they wake up and find out what they missed. That is a really specific kind of loss that I do not think we talk about enough.
All right, so let us get into what an episode actually looks like from start to finish. Because it's not just that someone sleeps a lot. The episodic pattern of KLS is actually very specific, and researchers have documented it carefully.
Episodes typically begin abruptly. A triggering event is sometimes identified, including fever, viral illness, alcohol consumption, emotional stress, or physical exertion, though not all episodes have a clear precipitant. The episode onset involves a rapid increase in sleep, usually occurring within 24 to 48 hours. The patient enters a semi-conscious state, and may be difficult to rouse. When awakened, they are often confused, unresponsive to questions, or respond in ways that are inappropriate or childlike. Memory encoding is severely impaired during this period. Most patients retain little to no episodic memory of events that occurred during the episode.
What really gets me is the thing Luma mentioned about not being fully unconscious. They are walking around, eating, sometimes responding to people. But it is like a version of them is present while they themselves are not. One patient described it as watching a video of yourself where someone else is controlling your body, which is genuinely one of the most unsettling things I have ever heard, and I have read a lot of unsettling things.
And the family is just there, watching all of this, trying to take care of someone who looks like their kid, but is not quite their kid. Some families describe it as the closest thing to losing someone without losing them. And that is not dramatic. That is accurate.
Episode duration ranges from 2 days to 5 weeks, with the average being 10 to 13 days. Patients typically experience between 7 and 19 episodes over the course of their lifetime, though the range is wide. Episodes tend to occur multiple times per year in the early phase of the condition. The interval between episodes can span weeks to months. Notably, inter-episode functioning is typically normal or near normal. Patients return to baseline cognitive function, mood, and behavior after each episode concludes.
Which brings up something that I found both hopeful and heartbreaking at the same time. Between episodes, people with KLS are fine. They are normal. They are themselves, which means they spend their well time knowing the next episode is coming and not knowing when. That kind of anticipatory dread is its own condition.
The neurobiological mechanisms underlying KLS are not fully understood, which is consistent with many rare neurological conditions. However, several findings have advanced the field significantly. Neuroimaging studies, particularly SPECT scans performed during active episodes, have shown hypoperfusion in specific brain regions. The thalamus, hypothalamus, and basal ganglia show reduced blood flow during episodes. These regions are involved in sleep-wake regulation, appetite, emotional processing, and consciousness. The pattern of hypoperfusion is consistent with the symptom cluster observed clinically.
So, translation for those of us who are not Luma. During an episode, the parts of the brain that control when you sleep, when you wake up, how hungry you are, and how aware you are of yourself and your surroundings are all basically running on reduced power. It is not that the brain is broken. It is more like certain circuits are operating at a fraction of their normal capacity.
That is a reasonable simplification. Additionally, genetic factors have been explored. Studies have identified an increased prevalence of KLS in individuals of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, suggesting a possible genetic component. First-degree relatives of KLS patients have a higher than average rate of similar sleep disturbances, though full KLS expression in relatives is rare. The HLA system, which governs immune response, has also been implicated. Several studies have found specific HLA haplotypes at elevated frequencies in KLS patients compared to control populations.
So there might be a genetic piece, an immune piece, and a brain blood flow piece. And researchers are trying to figure out how all of those things connect, which honestly just tells you how complex the brain is. We talk about neuroscience like we have it figured out, and then something like KLS comes along and reminds us that we are still very much in the early chapters.
One thing I find genuinely fascinating is the trigger pattern. A significant number of first episodes are preceded by a fever or an infection, which makes researchers think there might be a neuroimmune element, like the immune system doing something to the brain that sets the condition in motion. That is a really important thread, and it is one of the areas where current research is most active. Okay, so we know the average diagnostic delay for KLS is 4 years. Let's talk about why. Because it's not just that doctors are not paying attention. The diagnostic challenge here is real.
KLS has no definitive biomarker. There is no blood test, no genetic screen, no imaging finding that is pathognomonic, meaning specific enough to confirm the diagnosis on its own. Diagnosis is clinical, meaning it is based on pattern recognition from the patient's history and reported symptoms. KLS must meet criteria, including recurrent episodes of hypersomnia, cognitive impairment during episodes, a return to normal between episodes, and duration of at least 18 months. The rarity of the condition means many clinicians have never encountered a case, which delays pattern recognition significantly.
And when a teenage boy sleeps for 2 weeks and then wakes up fine, the first assumption is not usually a rare neurological disorder. It is that something else is going on. Depression, drugs, acting out, avoidance, and those assumptions carry real consequences. Families get blamed, kids get put on medications that do not help and sometimes make things worse, and the years keep passing.
The advocacy organization KLS Foundation, which was founded by families living with this condition, has done significant work to increase awareness in the medical community, specifically because of this diagnostic gap. They provide educational resources directly to neurologists, sleep specialists, and general practitioners. And part of their work is helping families know what questions to ask and what language to use when they walk into a doctor's office. Because sometimes diagnosis happens faster when the family comes in already knowing the name of what they might be dealing with.
I want to spend a minute here because I think this is the part that people outside the KLS community do not fully appreciate. Living with KLS in the well periods is its own thing. You are functioning normally, going to school or work, maintaining relationships, but you know an episode is coming. You just do not know when. So how do you plan? How do you commit to things? How do you build a life around something that can take the floor out from under you at any moment?
There have been accounts of people who had to drop out of school because the timing of episodes made it impossible to maintain attendance. Relationships that fell apart because a partner or friend could not understand why someone kept disappearing. Job losses, missed milestone events, weddings, graduations, the birth of siblings. Things that happened while the person was technically present, but actually unreachable.
Current treatment options are limited. There is no approved pharmacological treatment specifically for KLS. Some clinicians use lithium, which has shown modest efficacy in reducing episode frequency and duration in a subset of patients. Stimulants such as modafinil or amphetamines have been used to manage hypersomnia symptoms during episodes, but do not address the underlying neurological disruption. Amantadine has also been reported as potentially beneficial in some case series. Management is largely symptomatic and individualized.
Which is to say, there is no cure, and the best available tools are borrowed from other conditions and applied with varying success. That is a hard thing to sit with when you are a teenager or a young adult who just wants their life back.
Current research efforts are focused on several areas. The neuroimmune hypothesis is being explored through studies examining cytokine levels and immune activation markers in KLS patients during and between episodes. Genetic studies are ongoing, with genome-wide association studies aimed at identifying susceptibility loci. Neuroimaging research continues to refine the understanding of which brain circuits are most affected and whether functional connectivity changes persist between episodes. There is also growing interest in exploring the relationship between KLS and autoimmune encephalitis, given some clinical similarities.
And the KLS Foundation and similar organizations are actively funding and promoting patient registry studies because with a condition this rare, getting enough data from enough patients is one of the biggest challenges researchers face. Every patient who participates in a registry is essentially contributing to the possibility that future patients get diagnosed and treated faster. Here is the part that I find genuinely hopeful. KLS often does eventually stop. Most patients experience a gradual decrease in episode frequency and duration over time. Many go into what appears to be spontaneous remission, often in their late 20s or 30s. The exact reason for this is not understood, but it suggests that whatever is driving the condition may be connected to neurodevelopmental processes that stabilize over time.
But here is the thing about time being gone. You can stop having episodes. You can be completely free of KLS for the rest of your life. And the time is still gone. Your teenage years that went missing are still missing. The things you did not experience are still not in your memory. Recovery from KLS is not just medical. It is also the work of rebuilding an identity and a story that had gaps taken out of it without permission. That deserves acknowledgement.
Longitudinal studies suggest that cognitive functioning typically returns to baseline after remission. However, some patients report persistent mild deficits in memory and attention following extended illness duration. Psychological sequelae, including depression and anxiety related to the illness experience, are also documented. Comprehensive care models that include neurological follow-up and psychological support are recommended for patients entering remission.
I want to close with something that I have been sitting with since I started researching this. We talk a lot about mysterious conditions. Weird science is kind of our whole thing here. But what makes KLS different for me is not just how strange it is how much it reveals about what we still do not understand about consciousness, time, and what it means to be present in your own life. The brain can do this. It can take someone out of their own story, repeatedly, for years, and science is still catching up to why. That is not a reason to be scared. That is a reason to stay curious, and to fight for the people whose stories deserve to be told.
If you know someone who might be living with this, or if something in this video sounded a little too familiar, please share this. Awareness is how rare conditions get taken seriously, and these people deserve to be taken seriously.
Kleine-Levin Syndrome. Prevalence, rare. Impact, significant. Understanding, incomplete. Progress, ongoing. The data will improve. The patients deserve better. Those are not mutually exclusive observations.
Subscribe to Nwanyi for more mysteries of the human experience. Join the Nwanyi circle at nwanyi.com. We will see you in the next one.